Professor Madiasmo IAI President, Ms. Ali Jani Hussein, IAI Executive Director, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here in Jakarta to address such a distinguished audience. Actually, I arrived yesterday in the evening, and in the taxi from airport to the downtown, my hotel, taxi driver asked me, where do I come from? So I said, I am from South Korea, Seoul. And he asked me, what is the weather like in Seoul? I said, it's very cold, minus 10 degrees Celsius last night, and it will be cold after that. And he told me, wow, it's great. I have a plan to go to South Korea one day. So why? Because it's cold, because it's snowing. I come here, it's very wonderful. It's warm weather. I like this warm weather. That's curiosity. Human beings are curious animals. They want to go somewhere they are not familiar with. They want to experience that they are not familiar with. That curiosity make the world move. That curiosity make the profession move ahead. That's a human beings. Today, ultimately this conference celebrates the Indonesian accountancy profession's contribution to the nation and its role in regional and global affairs. In a short time, I am looking forward to hearing President Widodo's remarks at the official opening of the Congress. I am proud that IAI and its members are such a respected voice, and from IFAC's perspective, the IAI will always be honored as one of our original founding members. Its influence is still being felt. My friend and former IFAC board colleague, Amadi Hidibroto, served the global accountancy profession for 2 terms from 2011 to 2017. Indonesia is also playing a key role in the future of accountancy education, as I shall detail shortly. Today, I will been set an interesting challenge to consider the global landscape beyond 2030 and the profession's role in that future. While none of us can know what 2030 will look like, I believe the accountancy profession's relevance today is a good indicator of its ability to be relevant tomorrow. Remaining relevant is critical to our public interest mission and also to attracting and retaining the best quality talent to fuel our future. This requires us to be vigilant and responsive to macro trend, and nimble and agile as we anticipate further change. Common thread throughout all our future readiness is a rapid technological change. Let's start there. In 2016, the speed of change affecting humanity was described as the fourth industrial revolution by Professor Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum. The first industrial revolution, he said, used water and steam power to mechanize production. The second used electric power to create mass production. And third used electronics and technology to automate production. And now, fourth industrial revolution is building on the third, a digital revolution. This revolution blurs the lines between the physical, digital, and the biological worlds. And it is disrupted industry across all sectors with incredible speed. With this in mind, and with relative certainty, there are 4 global issues that will continue to evolve and in which professional accountant can make a big difference. Industrial disruption, fighting fraud and corruption, working hard to support good governance in both private and public sectors, and highlighting the need for regulatory harmony. There are also 4 professional issues we need to continue to pursue in order to be relevant in 2030 and beyond. These are code of ethics, the education and training system, next generation talent, and speak out on public interest issues. Let's start with industrial disruption. We all know how much disruptive technology has impacted the work of accountants and our clients. I'm not going to bombard you examples of these technologies in action, but I will tell you technology is high on the agenda for IFAC and its global partners. Entirely new digital industries and businesses have emerged with incredible speed, and the Asia-Pacific region has embraced this change. In September, Jakarta Post reported on a survey of IT leaders across the region, and Indonesia was ranked first in AI implementation. It's found about 65% of Indonesia's IT leaders had either implemented AI in their business or were expanding or upgrading their capacity to do so. From a learning standpoint, professional accountants, either working in or advising those firms, will have an excellent opportunity to assess the impact. But of course, technology is not only change underway in society right now. By 2030, many experts believe Indonesia will eclipse Germany to become the world's 4th largest economy. Indonesia's progress in building stronger systems and capacity has laid the foundations for a rapidly evolving middle class. And with that growth and economic sophistication comes greater opportunity for fraud and corruption as well. But it is counterbalanced by greater awareness and deep public desire to see it tackled with honesty and determination. There is further good news. The accountancy profession has great skills. Technology will help. And the next generation talent, digital natives, are passionate about tackling it too. This technology-oriented entrepreneurial generation is also one of the most socially minded. As a university professor myself, I know interest in ethics is extremely high among my students. They are greatly aware of scandalous public and private sector corruption and express outrage at the conditions that make it possible, even at a time of great economic transformation. The IMF says IFAC Pacific region will remain the world's fastest growing in 2019. And yet, last year, Transparency International released its most in-depth report into Asia-Pacific corruption. Almost 22,000 people were surveyed in 16 countries regions, and territories. More than 900 million people in our region were estimated to have paid a bribe in the past to access basic public services like education and healthcare. Many people felt powerless to report it because of insufficient whistleblower protection. According to the survey, more than 1 in 5 felt completely powerless to fight corruption, saying, "There is nothing I can do." EY 2017 Asia Pacific Fraud Survey has equally sobering news for the private sector. Despite better effort to combat fraud, bribery, corruption, significant numbers believe a wide range of unethical behaviors are justified to help business survive. More than a third reported bribery is commonplace in their industry. In the space of 4 years, the percentage of respondents who believe it was necessary to pay bribe to win a contract lifted from 14% to 35%. EY's study also reported that 4 in 5 respondents aged 25 to 34 years old would look for another job if their organization was involved in major fraud, bribery, or corruption case. And 82% said they would not want to work for a company that had been involved in fraud and corruption. There is some more positive news. Transparency International data revealed the majority of the region's citizens feel empowered to fight corruption. Best news of all, Indonesia's citizens, along with Australians and Taiwanese, feel the most empowered to fight corruption. Technology like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and big data have capacity to make real inroads into combating fraud and corruption. And we have the talent to make sense of the data. But for the technology available to us, fighting fraud and corruption can only be beaten within a strong corporate governance ecosystem. Again, this is an area in which professional accountants can add real value, and in which technology can help us make great strides. IFAC has long endorsed the OECD's principles of good governance. For many years, we have made a case for stronger corporate governance standards. We have globally accepted and adopted standards. We have a highly skilled and knowledgeable profession, but we need our effort to be complemented by strong corporate governance standards. Effective checks and balances are critical in the fight against corruption. In its G20 submissions, IFAC has recommended specific actions to support anti-corruption environment. They include greater consistency and enforcement of whistleblower protections around the world. But professional accountants working within businesses and on their boards have a remarkable opportunity to positively influence the governance structures and corporate boards. First, corporate governance is not simply board oversight. It's an ecosystem, the health of which is driven by many factors, including systems, controls, risk, compliance, and oversight infrastructure throughout an entire organization. CFOs, for example, have a more real-time, cloud-based insight available to them on their dashboards than ever before. bound by our code of ethics, supported by a strong institute, and applying global standards, Indonesia's professional accountants already improve corporate governance. Technology will increasingly provide deeper information which must be interpreted by accountants. That data will improve both public and private sector disclosures. Meanwhile, the profession must continue to champion open, transparent, and accountable corporate cultures. Together, technology and culture change will help make a meaningful difference in fighting fraud and corruption. Now, a related and important topic is regulatory fragmentation. Today, businesses are faced with a complex and ever-changing array of regulations. Events like Brexit and the regional and the global financial crisis have resulted in many institutions devoting more time and resources to compliance and regulatory issues. From risk and audit plan change to whether organizations can afford to expand overseas, regulatory fragmentation poses significant issues for all international organizations, including under-resourced regulators and supervisors. It is an especially big issue in the financial sector where interconnectedness and the free flow of capital is critical. On the global profession's behalf and firmly in the public interest, IFAC has raised this issue over many years. Simultaneously, IFAC has been building its relationship with the highly influential the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. In April this year, IFAC and the business at OECD launched a groundbreaking report which estimated the cost of regulatory fragmentation borne by financial institutions. The eye-watering sum, $780 billion a year, was conservative estimate. To fix the issue, IFAC has called for greater international cooperation by regulators and supervisors on key regulatory issues. Naturally, we are delighted to see this year's Argentina G20 leaders' declaration specifically identify regulatory fragmentation as vulnerability in the global financial system. But the world is becoming more complex. As international treaties are redrawn, when tariff structures change, or when nations implement new legislation that impacts global financial flows, there will always be greater need for advocacy for smart regulation. To be clear, smart, consistent regulation is important support for the global economy. The profession needs to speak out, not just on regulation that affects accountants, but on regulations that impacts the economic activity and therefore the public interest. Generating an orderly, informed debate is a key role for IFAC, and we have developed 10 guiding principles to facilitate smart regulation. They include wide consultation before implementation and post-implementation assessment for intended and unintended consequences. So far, we have just looked at 4 global issues: technology-driven disruption, fraud and corruption, and supporting both good governance and regulatory harmonization. These global issues, we must take stand to remain relevant in 2030 and beyond. There are also 4 issues that as a profession, we must continue to evolve to be relevant. These are code of ethics, the education and training system, next generation talent, and speaking out on public interest issues. The first, our code of ethics. 40 years ago, global standards for audit and assurance and ethics did not exist. It's hard now to imagine our world without them. This is a remarkable achievement, and key to it is the accountancy profession's strengths on the ground. Let us take our ethics standards as an example. Around the world, IFAC member organizations are focused on preparing future-ready profession. The International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants has launched a new version of the Code of Ethics, which becomes effective in June next year. The fundamental principles that have guided us for decades remain unchanged, but the code has been revised and restructured to support future-ready profession. The code united us as a global profession, and it is our personal North Star. Over the years, the IAI has consistently shown strong leadership on the need for the highest quality ethics. Today, we can be thankful that IAI, which has embraced the new code, is actively preparing its members for the new code's implementation. Earlier this year, the IAI hosted International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants member to speak at CPD event focused on the new code. And to ensure the broadest possible inclusion and successful implementation, I thank the IAI for also inviting members from IFAC's associate member here in Indonesia, the IAPI. Indeed, the IAI has had a fine history of not just adopting and implementing global standards, it has been instrumental in setting them too. Over decades, global profession has benefited enormously from Indonesia's experienced representation on a variety of standard-setting boards. Currently, Indonesia is represented on the International Accounting Education Standard Board by the University of Indonesia's Professor Siddhartha Utama. Which brings me to the second issue on which we must focus, ensuring our education and training is fit for purpose. Because lifelong learning and continuous improvement are important features of our profession, we know that today's model is not necessarily tomorrow's. Being nimble and agile means changing and pivoting in the new directions when warranted. We have an enormous responsibility to ensure all accountants are equipped for change and success in the fourth industrial revolution. No matter what their age, no matter what their experience, accountants must be supported by learning environment that reflects today's realities and which prepares them for even more powerful change to come. The same DNA that fueled the creation of our global standard 40 years ago is now being applied by the IAESB, the Education Standard Board, and IFAC to the future of education. IFAC's vision for the profession is that it's essential to strong, sustainable organizations, financial market, and economies. That vision can only be achieved on the shoulders of competent, credible accountancy professionals who are committed to lifelong professional development. Education, as you will know, is a nuanced, multi-stakeholder, and resource-intensive exercise. So many factors impact global education provision. Different models for undertaking and achieving professional qualifications, different legislation governing what the profession can and cannot do, and differing on-the-ground capacity to support implementation. Earlier this year, IFAC and IAESB announced the creation of a multi-stakeholder advisory group to examine a more agile, comprehensive, integrated approach to accountancy education. And Indonesia's Professor Utama is on it. I believe advisory groups' work will be immensely important to supporting future-ready profession. At the national level and in the global environment, the IAI is doing terrific work delivering professional qualifications and especially increasing the skills of the preparer community. Professional qualifications based on international standards further facilitate the profession's harmonization. Importantly, they will promote mobility of qualified and skilled accountants in the region. The ASEAN Mutual Recognition Framework for Accountancy Service is a great example of cooperation among the region's professional accountancy organizations. The IAI is also a member of Chartered Accountants Worldwide, connecting hundreds of thousands of professional accountants around the world. It is clear that the profession recognizes the need for scale, global mobility, knowledge exchange, and relevance. It is vital that education systems provide broader skill sets and work harder to close the technology skills gap. Actually, the fundamental skill required to conduct an audit have not changed, but the tools to conduct it have changed dramatically. This is not the news, any of you, or the profession. IFAC's members are working hard to attract the best and brightest talent. As the first academic to lead the profession, I know how much this challenge applies to education as well. And now the final two areas, retaining our focus on next generation talent and speaking out on public interest issues. As IFAC's Generation Z surveys show, we are doing a decent job of attracting talent, and it can only be because accountancy is seen as relevant and interesting. Nearly 3/4 of respondents around the world indicate they would consider accountancy career, and over 1/5 had committed to it. But in the race to 2030 and beyond, the global profession must remain on top of its game. Everyone, including our passionate millennials and Generation Z, must play a positive and constructive role. There is also real need to join forces with other organizations to foster both meaningful progress and yield faster results. I have already referred to fighting fraud and corruption. Combating it will require intense, coordinated action across all civil society institutions. In the past, for example, IFAC and International Bar Association have further expanded their relationship to see where we can cooperate on fighting fraud and corruption. When we speak out on these issues and are seen to be actively engaged, the profession will continue to remain attractive. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the IAI for its leadership in Indonesia. Around the world, the professional accountancy organizations that IFAC's members provide more than just qualified accountants and strategic business advisors. Today, profession is at the cutting edge of some of the world's most exciting new technologies. Technology that the next generation talent will readily embrace. Professional accountants and PAOs can work directly to support sustainability and fight corruption, two major areas of continued concern for next generation talent. All of these aspects, alongside the global standards that inform our work, including our code of ethics, mean we stand for something very precious. We build trust, inspire confidence in the broader community and throughout the global economy. Since the invention of double-entry bookkeeping, we have always stood for fiscal transparency. As Jacob Soll mentioned in his book, The Reckoning, for any country, including Roman Empire, Spanish Empire, French Empire, and modern nations, when they kept public financing and its bookkeeping transparent, the country flourished. But when they intentionally ignored them, the country started failing. And in modern times, we have always stood for public-private financial transparency, and that is in the public interest. In summary, today we have talked about the four global external issues: industrial disruption, fighting fraud and corruption, good governance in both the public and private sectors, and regulatory harmony. We have also talked about the profession's internal issues, such as the code of ethics, education and training system, as well as next generation talent, and speaking out on the public interest issues. Being nimble and agile is critical as we respond to those external, internal challenges that will lead our accounting profession to play a critical role in building strong and sustainable economies. Profession's relevance and the level to which it is embedded in the global economy gives me great confidence that we will continue to be relevant in 2030 and beyond. We know there has never been greater need for the profession's skills, but it is up to you to deliver the broad-minded thinking that will help propel Indonesia to even greater height. It's been a privilege to be here with you. Thank you.